All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thursday night pre-show. Brandon Carney, Madi Kroll here to get you guys ready for Thursday night football. Maddie, quite a banger of a game we've got. This is basically a Super Bowl matchup.
I mean, thank goodness for the Baker Mayfield storyline, because if not, we would just be bored out of our minds. Now we have an incentive to watch.
I will say the Baker Mayfield thing came out of sort of nowhere, but I mean, look, I'm here for it. I did mention them as one of the teams on our podcast, but I also mentioned probably 25% of the NFL as potential fits, whether he would be a backup or a starter. The Rams thing is interesting, though, because you wonder, like, why, right? Like, are they looking at him as maybe like a long-term tryout for a backup role? Because Stafford's not going anywhere unless he retires out of nowhere. But it's the one thing that I don't think I mentioned on our podcast that I should have, and one of the reasonings for getting Baker is like the Rams don't have a draft pick to tank for. They don't have it. The Lions have it. So the Rams have no incentive to just throw the season away and be like, whatever, it doesn't matter if we lose the rest of our games. They're just trying to, look competent and not piss their fans off too much here to close out the season. So the Baker fit is interesting. We'll see how much he plays. It hasn't been confirmed yet whether he's going to start or just mix in or what's going to happen here. But it does seem like he's going to see some kind of action. So
Absolutely. And I do think even going into next season, that injury that Stafford suffered, I don't know if you looked into the comeback for that or the rehab. It's intense. Just even finding a surgeon that you trust to be able to do that. Hey, look, we switched names. I love it.
Nice.
We're about to get us off there.
Oh, and now we switched sides. Even better.
Oh, I love when stuff like that happens. Anyways, I think that that's going to be tough to come back from. So they need some type of answer at quarterback. If Baker Mayfield can go out, show out for the next few games, he might be able to work his way back in next year. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for the best for Baker Mayfield. I mean, I was a Baker Mayfield supporter for a very long time, and I still can't really explain like what has happened to him with this fall from grace. It's really weird. Like he had, really good seasons for the Browns, and then had a season where he was just had every injury like under the sun. There was stuff that was on injury reports, stuff that wasn't on injury reports. It was basically every part of his body was broken in that 2021 season, and then just immediately yeeted to another franchise. It's like, has he really had a chance to reestablish himself on a team that's not the Panthers, but at the same time, how do you not at least beat out Sam Darnold? I don't know. It's a very weird situation. So we'll see how it pans out. I'm rooting for him. Maybe this will be a mini resurgence for Baker Mayfield, but we are here to answer you guys' questions. So if you have any fantasy football or NFL related questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, whatever chat you're watching from, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere else. Not sure exactly where we're streaming to. We kind of just stream everywhere if we can. So hit us with your questions. I do see one here off the top, though. Pick 2, Latavius Murray, Cam Akers, McKinnon, or James Cook. So we are scraping the bottom of the barrel of running backs here. Listen, I know this is where a lot of people are at this point in the season, right? You've probably got guys that have been hurt, and you're just kind of trying to find anybody with a pulse that can squeak out 8 to 10 fantasy points. And if you get more than that, you are thrilled. So let me look up a couple of these guys. I know Latavius Murray has had some pretty solid volume these past few weeks. So he's not a terrible option, which if you had told me 6 weeks ago that I'd be recommending Latavius Murray to anybody, I would have slapped myself in the face.
I agree with that. I will say for sure, I don't like Cam Akers. I really don't. And for me, I think it's almost coming down between Cook and Murray. And I don't know. I feel like Cook, but I also don't know what that's going to look like this weekend.
Yeah. So, I mean, Cam Akers had a good week last week. Obviously, you have to make that decision tonight as to whether or not you want to get Cam Akers in your lineup. But overall, I think you're probably right. That roster is just so decimated that you're not expecting a ton of offensive production in general out of the Rams.
Yeah.
So let me just look around at these
and
guys.
Also, you have to remember that they have a short week coming up. So he had a lot of production last week, and I know that that's why a lot of people are buzzing about him. But it's concerning because are they going to try to save him and count this almost as like a loss, or not go as hard and then rest him for the short week that's coming up? I don't know. For me, I'm thinking Cook is who I would go with.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, wait, it was James Cook, not Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, James Cook. Yeah.
Okay.
So James Cook has been coming on a little bit. I mean, he has been taking some snaps away from Devin Singletary, as has Nyheim Hines, actually, which has been
Yeah.
interesting because Nyheim Hines basically did nothing as soon as the Bills traded for him. And it was like, all right, why'd they trade for him if they're just going to use him on like special teams and really nowhere else? But James Cook specifically, 14 carries for 64 yards last week, as well as 6 catches for 41 yards. So he's a little bit of PPR gold if you have that as a setting, which most people do these days. And then let me look at McKinnon real quick just to cover all our bases if I know how to spell McKinnon.
Yeah, I might have changed my mind because I thought that I was Dalvin, not James.
All right, McKinnon is I'm not in love with McKinnon. To be honest with you, I think my 2 picks here, I'm gonna lock in
Murray and Akers.
I think I'm gonna lock in Akers just because of the matchup. Like I don't necessarily think last week's production is what you should be chasing. Like if he gets 10 or 12, be happy with that, like I said. But I think with the matchup and with these lower tier sort of options that you're deciding between, he is one of the better ones. And then it's really between Latavius Murray and James Cook for me. I would lean James Cook. I think Latavius Murray is probably going to get game scripted out, is my guess, because the Broncos defense is good. Maybe they do keep it close enough that they can run at least a little bit in the second half, but all logic says Chiefs blowout, Broncos can't run as much, and that's it for Latavius Murray. Let's ride indeed, and you'll see more of like Mike Boone in this game. So I would go James Cook and Cam Akers, but all in all, good luck, my friend. Because
that sound effect is going to be in a haunted house somewhere.
That sound effect, I hope, exists for years to come on this podcast and pre-show, to be honest. Let's see. Jacob coming in with, hey, guys, who do you got tonight? And what do you want to see from both these teams tonight? Who do I got tonight? I mean, I got the Raiders, I think.
Yeah, I have the Raiders also.
Right. And what do I want to see from them? I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I would like to see Baker look competent, but at the same time, even if Baker is going to have some kind of resurgence on the Rams, it's probably not going to happen in his first game with 2 days of preparation. So the Rams, I don't know. There's not much to look for the Rams. It's a lost season. For the Raiders, I would look for, if you're a Raiders fan, you are looking for absolute dominance tonight. That would be my bar. Like if you're trying to save the season, backdoor your way into a playoff appearance, have Josh McDaniels maybe get another year on this job, you need to dominate this game. Do not let it be close with a game with the Rams, who don't even have Aaron Donald on the defensive end. You need to dominate. I want to see the Raiders, just from a logistical standpoint, win by 20 plus.
I want to see Carr and Adams just pop off. And I want to see some trash talking. I have a question for you. Percentage-wise, what's the percentage that Baker Mayfield starts tonight?
Percentage that Baker Mayfield starts tonight? Oh, man. So they're looking at Wolford, whether he's ready or not. I don't think they would start Bryce Perkins over Baker. I'm going to give it a flat 50. Like it's going to depend on just
50-50.
if Wolford's healthy. Like I feel like if Wolford is healthy and Wolford starts, like Baker's still going to get a fair share of snaps in this game. Like, going platoon quarterback is sort of a college strategy, and if you're doing it in the NFL, it's a little bit of a childish strategy, in my opinion, unless you have a thing like Taysom Hill or that you're going to mix him in. But I just remember the Panthers doing it with like Cam Newton and whatever they had last year. And it was just a disgusting trio. So it doesn't usually make much sense, but when your season is lost, like the Rams, it's almost like, why not? So I'll put it at 50 and we'll see.
Go from there. Okay.
Let's see. Jane says, should I start Dak or Geno? I love these questions that I look at from the perspective of if I had gotten this before the season, I would have been so confused.
Yeah. I think that we're going to see more production out of running backs in the Cowboys game. I think Zeke's going to be taking home most of those touchdowns. So I would say maybe Geno, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you, actually. I think Geno's been the more consistent fantasy quarterback for a little bit. I mean, Dak's fantasy performances this season, we're looking at, so we won't count week 1. That's when he got hurt. From the time he came back against the Lions, he's gone for, I'll just forget the decimals. He's gone for 12, 25, 19, 20, 14, and 16. So like decent, you're happy with that, but it's nothing to really blow you away. And it's nothing to separate him from Geno Smith, really. Geno's games this year, we'll look at like at least the last few. So he's gone, we'll call it last 5 weeks, 19, 20, 19, 19, 22. He's nothing if not consistent.
Yeah.
And he's got the better matchup this week against the Panthers. They're also probably going to be without Kenneth Walker. You wonder if that makes them lean on the pass game more, if they're really going to, give a ton of work to Tony Jones or whoever it ends up being. I feel like I like Geno more.
I do too.
Jackson says, thoughts on Seattle's playoff chances with the QB situation, with the Rams and the Niners. Okay, so he's saying with how the teams in their division have been sort of devastated, what are the Seahawks playoff chances? So to me, the Rams doesn't matter. They've been out of it regardless. The Niners, so it gives the Seahawks an outside chance of winning the division, right? Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but the chances have at least gone up. I think their playoff chances are really high as a wild card. I've been saying it for weeks. Getting a wild card in the NFC is not that hard of a task this far into the season. Like, there's not a ton of teams in that conversation. It's the two bottom teams in the NFC East, the Commanders and the Giants, and then the Seahawks. Outside of that, you're looking for a team to kind of rise up and win a bunch of games in a row if they're going to enter that conversation. I think the Seahawks have probably an 80% chance of making the playoffs, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they were one of our sleeper picks, right? Or one of our dark horse
the Seahawks,
picks.
Yeah, I believe you did have them as one of the picks. Yep. And I mean, look, that's a team that I could see upsetting a team in the first round of the playoffs.
100%.
This
People are sleeping.
Absolutely. This is a team that's exceeded expectations all year. And I mean, I love Geno. I love the story. I love this young defense that is outperforming all expectations. I just hope Kenneth Walker can get healthy because he is a big piece of that offense and a big part of what makes them exciting.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Why is this is a good question from Ben. Why is MVP only for QBs now? Maddie, you want to take this one?
I don't know. I've been screaming this forever. If I had my vote of MVP for this season, it would be Jason Kelce. So I think that it should be opened up. I think that that's a bunch of BS. I think that it's just a way of being able to reward the quote unquote leader of a team. I don't know the reasoning behind that, but I do think that it should change.
I do think it's silly. I've been saying this for a while as well, that it's like, I'm okay if you want to, admit that the quarterback is the most important position on the field. It absolutely is. So, quarterbacks naturally will have an advantage when it comes to the MVP voting. But I don't like how not transparent the name of the award is. Because, you have the MVP and you have the Offensive Player of the Year, right? The real definition of those awards, 90% of the time, is best quarterback and best non-quarterback. And that's not what they're called. And it's silly to me. And I think when you look at MVP odds and you see a guy like, even at this point in the season, a guy like Kenny Pickett will be above like Jalen Waddle or something, because Jalen Waddle has no chance, right? But if Kenny Pickett were to go supernova and get the Steelers into the playoffs, he might get like a third place vote now that the NFL has changed it to a tiered voting system. I just think that's silly. Like, I do too. It's ridiculous. The fact that these mediocre, super mid to even bad quarterbacks are above like really, really good skill players. I don't know. I think it needs to be opened up as well. I think like Cooper Kupp should have gotten way more votes than he did last year. 100%. Receiving Triple Crown. What are we doing? Let's see what else we got here. Another question from Jacob. Also, how many touchdowns would Davante Adams have tonight? Because he has been having two touchdowns each game, and that's it. 2 touchdowns each game. Well, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me.
He has a higher ceiling than that. And they should pop off. It really just is going to be dependent on if they tone it down or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
Davante Adams is kind of a hot and cold type of guy, I feel like.
Yeah, so he's been on this crazy streak. I think the last time he really had a disappointing game was the week where he was battling an illness. And when you have that on the injury report, it's always so tough because you never know what exactly that means. We've all had illnesses that have ranged from, okay, I don't feel very good, but the NFL team is required to report it if you have that sort of illness. And we have those illnesses where it's like, I want to die, but I'm good enough to step on the field Sunday because I'm slightly recovered. So that's really the last time he was super underperforming. Since then, he's been on a tear, and it's been part of why the Raiders have won so many games. I think Davante Adams anytime touchdown is probably one of the better bets any week.
I love that.
How many touchdowns will he have tonight? I'll earmark him for 2 again. Screw it. Why not?
Yeah.
Question from Houdini Airsoft said, which game are you most looking forward to this weekend? Oh, that's an interesting one. All right, let's take a look here down the games. Let's see. So the first one, okay. For me, the game I'm the most interested in is Lions Vikings as of right now, because I remember we talked about this on the podcast as well, where I was like, this is going to be a super big opportunity for the Lions to prove that they, can make the playoffs, can be a difference maker. And I was like, I don't know what the spread is for that game, but we'll see. The Lions are favored. Lions are favored against the 10-2 Vikings. I know the Lions are at home, but the Lions are 5-7 and favored, not only favored, but by 2 points against this Vikings team. So I am curious to see if they can pull through on that spread, if they can actually win this game at home. Because if they do, again, this is the first step to a genuine possible playoff appearance for this team.
I will say I actually like the Lions here also. I was looking at stats for our old buddy Goff that we like to make fun of. Goff, that came out as golf. Goff.
Jared
Anyways,
Goff.
he's lights out at home. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, and I want to see what Jameson Williams can do. Hopefully they expand his role a little bit as we go
Yes.
forward, because that first game was basically just here's your cup of coffee, you're back, you get a target or so, but he's expected to be a factor, hopefully, at some point.
Not count for sure, but I think that they'll probably turn him loose.
Yeah, we'll see. They've been conservative with their injuries, but I'd like to see him get involved.
Playoffs on the line.
LeBron's better says, should I start Latavius Murray or DJ Moore? This game is for me to make the playoffs or not. Ooh, okay. So a lot riding.
A lot of people this week.
Yeah. So my first instinct says you go with DJ Moore, who doesn't have Baker Mayfield as his quarterback anymore, and I believe had a pretty good game with Sam Darnold back. DJ Moore last week before the bye against the Broncos had 4 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown, only 6 targets. So the target share has not changed at all. And the Seahawks secondary is not bad. To me, it just comes down to, I talked about it earlier, the Latavius Murray game script issue. And when you put these two players side by side and ask which player is actually good at football, I'm going to take DJ Moore. So I think it's him. But again, what the floor is for a Panthers receiver these days. Like, we've seen it with DJ Moore for the past several years. You know what you're getting yourself into, but you also know what you're getting yourself into if you start sort of an old, washed up Latavius Murray on the worst offense in the NFL.
Yeah. I don't hate the Murray start. It's also tough because there's a lot of bye situations going on this week, so people are kind of desperate. I don't mind Murray as like a flex.
Yeah, no, I expect to see Murray in some lineups. Just when it comes to Murray or this guy, like I'm going to be leaning on the other guy a decent amount. But like, again, Latavius is a guy that you can count on for at least 12 to 15-ish carries, regardless of the game script, you'd hope.
That's true.
So, we'll see.
Kind of even.
What also can these teams do to beat the Vikings? Because some of these quarters for the Vikings, they give right up nearly. I'm not sure what this question is asking. I'll be completely honest. I cannot translate this question. This question appears to be in what's the word? Cyrillic? Whatever the Russian language is.
Yeah, it almost seems like they're asking how you can actually beat the Vikings, because even if you beat them through multiple quarters, they somehow find a way to win.
Okay.
Shut down Justin Jefferson is really your best bet.
Yeah, and I do think that the Vikings winning all these games by like one possession has been quite the storyline. I saw this graphic on Twitter the other day that it was like, if every game that was decided by one possession this year had gone the other way, how would the standings look? And the Vikings were 1-11. And I was like, oh dear. So, that's where the Vikings are at. It does make me worry about them when it comes to playoff time, though. It's like, are they really going to hold on in these sort of close games against legitimately good teams? So I think that's why mentally a lot of people aren't taking them seriously still as like a Super Bowl contender. We all understand they're going to win the division, but Super Bowl contenders, we don't really have them in that conversation. And I think that's part of why. Henry says, who do you think is better, Justin Jefferson or Davante Adams? Oh, man, you want me to split hairs here right on stream? Justin Jefferson or Davante Adams? Man,
I'm going with Jefferson. It's very, very slight. I'm not throwing a fit if I have either of them on my team, but I've sang Justin Jefferson's praises. He's like an aphrodisiac. He's the man.
Yeah, I'll take Jefferson as well. It is by so little. I want to acknowledge just how good Davante Adams is off the line. Like, I saw this interview with him where he's talking about his thought process that he goes through in the matter of like a couple of seconds of what he's going to do to try and just catch the corner off guard. And just fascinating to hear athletes talk about stuff like that. And I was like, you are a psycho. You're like the Kobe Bryant of releases off the line. Like, it's fascinating. So I want to give him credit for that. He's probably a little better at that than Jefferson is, but Jefferson overall, and especially long-term, as he's so much younger. Give me Jefferson. Will Heaney says, do I start James Cook or Mike Williams at flex? I think if Mike Williams is healthy and good to go, you got to go with Mike Williams. He's just proven to be such a larger part of the offense than James Cook. James Cook is like an ascending player and is definitely interesting in PPR formats, but those 6 catches that he had last week, I'm not ready to call that like a repeatable thing just yet. He's still got 2 other guys in his backfield. He's still got Josh Allen, who's going to run the ball a lot as well. Mike Williams is kind of one of the guys that makes this Chargers offense go when it does go.
Yeah, and I agree with that. A lot of what the Bills were doing the past few weeks is trying to reset their offense, and how you do that is you go back to the run game, designed run game, right? Josh Allen hasn't been executing that as well. So I think that what we're going to see is they're going to give him a little bit more on the fly decision making, letting him do Josh Allen things. So I don't think that we're going to see as much production from James Cook.
Yeah, and I think Mike Williams, we look at the games he's played this year before the ankle injury. So 3 points in the season opener against the Raiders. Then we've got 25, 8, 19, 23, 3, and 21. So we've known this about Mike Williams. He's been this way for years. He's a boom bust type of player, but I think the upside is there. And I think, honestly, the floors of him and James Cook are very similar. Like, I would not be surprised to see either one of them go for 4 or 5 points, but I think the upside with Mike Williams is much, much higher as the wide receiver 1 in LA. So
I agree.
Question from Thomas Darrow. Are the Cardinals done? Are the Cardinals done? So I did notice, I believe the Patriots are favored in this game against the Cardinals, despite it being in Arizona, which is interesting.
Are the Cardinals done for this season? Absolutely. Where do the Cardinals go from here? I'm not sure. There's obviously some issues going on in-house with Murray and everybody else. It's looking rough. You know, they were plagued by injury at the beginning of the season. Then they had Hard Knocks, which is like a curse. You add Hard Knocks on top of a video game release, and of course Murray's not going to be there, right? So Cardinals are done this season. I don't know where they go in the offseason. I really don't.
Yeah, I think Cliff's time might be coming to an end. It's one of those more low-key coaching hot seats. Like these other guys are failing so spectacularly. Like, you've got Hackett, you had McDaniels for a while. Some of these guys fail in such a just glorious fashion that we're not talking about Cliff Kingsbury as much. But I think Cliff Kingsbury is probably going to be on his way out. Because look, when you have a team that has the makings to be competitive, or at least is only a few pieces away from being competitive, and they're not, where does the heat go? It always goes to either the coach or the quarterback, and you're usually pressured to make a move on at least one of those. Kyler Murray is locked up for the next several years. Cliff Kingsbury has been getting some of this heat for also a few years. So I think
very public heat too.
Cliff is going to be the one that gets bounced, whether it's this year or next year. I feel like probably this year, and they'll have sort of a fresh start. I don't know who they're going to go get, but that's where they're at. Are the Jets done with Zach Wilson, or do you keep him? Probably the hottest topic of this show for the last couple of weeks, ever since the whole, do you feel like you let your defense down? No. Yeah, I think he's done.
Done.
I don't see. I think when you get benched the way he was, and for the reasons that he was, there's really no other option but to trade him. Like, Mike White should be the starter this year for the rest of the season, and he should be the starter next year unless they go out and get an upgrade. Zach Wilson is a guy that it's like, look, maybe you'd love to have him around as a backup, but this all happened sort of so unceremoniously that I think a fresh start for Zach is just better for all parties involved. I give Zach a lot of grief for what he did and how he handled it. At the end of the day, look, I don't want the guy's career to be over. I do think a fresh start would be interesting for him. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams out there. See what you can get for him. Maybe you get a 2nd round pick or something like that. I don't know if any team will pay that up. I'm sure he's not fetching a first these days, but 2nd or 3rd or whatever it may be, ship him off somewhere and see if he can regain the prospect status that he had.
Even if you count out like wins and losses, if you just look at team production or player production, Garrett Wilson's production goes through the roof when anybody but Zach Wilson is under center.
Right.
And then you look at the entire team wearing shirts that say Mike fucking White. Of course, you just know that Zach Wilson's time, it's just done. You've lost the locker room. You don't have your team behind you. You obviously don't have the coaching staff behind you. And New York media, it takes one slip up and they're done with you. So I think he's out for sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're rallying around Mike White. He's a guy that clearly has the locker room in a positive way. So I feel like you ain't going back to Zach this year for sure. And if you do it next year, prayers up, because I don't think the fan base or the teammates or anybody in that building would receive that very well. I think Zach, barring injury, has probably taken his last snap as a Jet. Ben says, as a GM, would you rather a great
Ooh,
receiver or O lineman? So that we're
great
talking
question,
one
Ben.
receiver or one O lineman. So this is really the Bengals question, isn't it? This was the whole thing leading up to when they drafted Jamar Chase. There was that
Mhm.
graphic that would go around that it was like Burrow throwing to anyone, but with Penei Sewell blocking for him, or Burrow throwing to Chase with anyone blocking for him. And widely considered to be Penei Sewell was the better pick. People thought they were like, oh, well, you could just go get a receiver. Great receiver or great O lineman, I think I'll take the great receiver. If we're talking like a top 5 guy, I think I'll take the receiver. And like, not to discredit O lineman, and I'm sure Maddie, you were about to go off about this because I know your affinity for the O line. Like, the O line's a unit, whereas a
Mhm.
receiver, like you can kind of build around one super elite receiver. We see, Devontae Adams. Granted, he's supposed to have Hunter Renfro next to him, but we've seen these top receivers be kind of alone and
Cooper
still
Kupp.
performing great. So
Yeah. I'm going a great offensive lineman. You can't beat it. They're so rare to actually have one that you can consider great that it's not the great wide receivers are a diamond per dozen, but if you have a great offensive line and your quarterback's protected, you can really have any rookie quarterback come in and make some moves. There's a ton of guys that are coming in and out, and I just kind of feel like offensive linemen are too rare to pass up,
yeah, now I actually
and they're
did read.
cheaper.
True. I did read that question in the side of the chat before it was popped on screen. And so I actually read it wrong at first. I thought it was great receiving core or O line, at which point I was going to say O line for
Yeah,
sure.
of
No
course.
question about it. But I think when it comes down to one player or the other, I give the slight edge to receiver, but I could totally see why O line would be the pick as well. Joshua Palmer versus Gabe Davis. All right,
Oh,
back to a fantasy question here.
yeah. I
Let's
just need to
see.
look at the production.
Yeah, me too. So all I know about this right now, top of my head, as a Gabe Davis drafter, he has been frustrating all year. So Gabe Davis has been just super, super boom bust with honestly a lot more busts than there have been booms. He's gone over 20 points. I'll put the bar at 15. He's gone over 15 points 4 times, sorry. And he's gone single digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Gabe
Mhm.
Davis is a really frustrating player to own. Josh Palmer, on the other hand, his situation is changing, right? With Mike Williams coming back, although he's still a reliable third option. Man, I think call it a gut call. I'm going with Gabe Davis.
I am too, but it does make me nervous knowing what the Jets have whenever it comes to receiving
Yeah.
defenders. And Sauce kind of scares me, I'm not gonna lie. But uh I'm going Gabe Davis here.
Yeah. You hope Sauce spends the majority of his afternoon on Stephon Diggs. I don't honestly know what his
You
like
hope, but
trend
they
is.
didn't play it that way last
Okay, so
time.
that's what I was wondering. I wasn't sure if he was a shadow corner, or if he was a side of the field type corner, or if they mix it up, or what it was.
They
So,
mixed, yeah.
all right, so that'll be tough for Gabe, but we'll call it.
Well,
He's the guy that
and
can break
he's
the
a
game in a
set
big
left,
play.
yeah.
So hopefully he
Um,
gets one of those for you. Do my Browns have a serious chance at beating the Bengals? What about the playoffs?
no.
At this point, okay, here's the thing. You say that. Playoffs, no. Do they have a chance at beating the Bengals? Joe Burrow's never beaten the Browns. That's wild to me. And maybe that is just pure chance that this is a thing, but this is a thing. So I have to say they have at least a chance. Look, maybe Deshaun Watson after a game has, gotten his rhythm back to an extent. That defense just played out of its mind. Yes, they were facing Kyle Allen, who is going to give defenses a lot of opportunities to make plays. But the Browns, yeah, I think they got a shot. I'm not giving them a huge shot, but I'll give them who's at home in this game? Who's the home team?
I give them I
There we
honestly give them maybe like a 5% or a 10% chance, and that's if there's a major injury. The offensive line has improved with the Bengals. You're now getting back Mixon. You have Pirine, and then you have both of your long guys down the stretch. I don't see the Browns can't cover them. They can't cover all of the weapons, right? Like they're going to struggle just to even cover Chase,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Chase is going to be coming back full
Yeah,
strength.
the
So.
defensive on the defensive side, it'll definitely be a challenge. It's just like one of those things where, regardless of what you see on paper, the fact that Burrow's winless against the Browns to this point, it's like the Bengals, I'm sure, were favored in probably all of those games, at least on paper as well. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see if it's a case where the Browns just have their number or what it is. I'll bump it a little higher than you. I'll give it 20%, but I still think the Bengals should come out on top
Bengals should come
pretty
crazy,
easily
yeah.
here. Do the Seahawks still have a chance to take the NFC West division lead with the 49ers on their third string quarterback? Yes, they do have a chance. We touched on it earlier. I think what are we at with the Saints? What are they, 2 games back? Oh, they're only 1 game back. Okay. So yeah, they have a shot. It will come down to, they face the 49ers in 2 weeks. That'll be a big, big game. If they can, Seahawks take care of business this week against the Panthers, and then they can beat the 49ers, we can start having that conversation. If they lose to the 49ers, they then have the Chiefs right after that. It's going to be really tough. Their rest of season schedule has some tough teams on it. Like there's Panthers, but then there's a stretch of 49ers, Chiefs, and Jets who are not going to be a pushover team. They finish off with the Rams, who will probably be a pushover team. But again, they barely beat them this past week, so who knows?
They barely.
What cornerback duo do you take, the Eagles or the Jets? That's interesting. Maddie, what do you think?
Just the cornerback duo. That's so hard. I have such a hard time separating.
I feel like I'm leaning Eagles. I feel like just by a little bit. I mean, as much as I've fallen in love with Sauce Gardner, I feel like I'm going to take the Eagles by just a bit.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I guess I have to go the Eagles, but I will say that I have a hard time separating just cornerback duo from like the entire unit.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, I guess Eagles. I really like Sauce though.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers this season only? Oh, okay. Hot take. So, I mean, we're talking, I guess, rest of season. Who's going to perform better? Or who would you rather have on your team? I mean, a few ways to interpret it. I feel like it's
Rodgers, I think, just because of Watson.
Yeah, Watson's really revived Rodgers these last couple of weeks. Like Carr has Devontae Adams, but Rodgers is just the better player still, I think, regardless of the injuries that he is fighting. Yeah, I'll take Rodgers by just a bit.
Just looking at the rest of their schedule, I feel like Rodgers. But that's only for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. Going forward, I'd rather, neither probably.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll take death.
Over under on quarters watched tonight at 2. Thomas, I'm not sure what you mean. This is the Super Bowl preview. What do you mean? This is going to be the game of the year.
Bran, are you actually going to watch all of it?
No.
I might tune in, fourth quarter.
Maddie, I'll be completely transparent with you. The plan is for us to go grocery shopping during this game. It's not. I was like, listen, we've got Raiders, Rams. They have a combined 8 wins. Baker Mayfield, as much as I am interested to see what he does, there's highlights for that. Sitting through the trash that this is probably going to be, or just the trouncing by the Raiders. That, like I said, I hope that's what happens if they have any self-respect. It's not appointment television. It's just not. This is one of probably the worst primetime games, Thursday night games at least, that we'll have. We had that awful stretch in the beginning of the year of like 4 straight terrible Thursday night football games. Yeah. Then we kind of got back on track. I think we're going back down the other way for this week.
Listen, I'll be monitoring Twitter too, though. So if Baker hits the field, I'll tune in. I just need to see what's going on and what's happening.
Baker Mayfield, if nothing else, is a draw. James Guthrie says, "Let's go Raider Nation." Hey James, we will see. We will see if they can pull it off. I hope Adams torches Ramsey. Yeah. Listen, there's at least a couple of interesting matchups in this game.
I want the trash talk.
Yeah, if you are, truly addicted to the game, then Raiders Rams will be just fine for you to get your fix on this Thursday night. I generally am. Look, we just need some food, and I'm just like, this game is not going to keep me here, and when I have something else to do. But listen, if you guys are going to be sitting down watching this entire game, enjoy. I hope it is everything you hope it could be. I hope Baker Mayfield goes for 400 yards and 7 touchdowns tonight and breaks NFL records.
That's right.
And gets.
That's all.
Okay. Let's ride indeed. You know who's going to ride?
Let's ride.
We are going to ride off into the sunset at the end of this show, which is right now. So, Maddie, you got anything to say to the people before we sign off today?
That went by fast. You guys come kick it with us. Listen to our podcast. Come kick it with us next week. Bring your questions. I've got nothing.
Fair. Hey, listen, that's good enough. The promotion's important.